Close your eyes for a moment. And picture this, the year is 1788. You're in London, but not the glittering, bustling capital we know today. This is Georgian London, steeped in smoke and silence, where the cold wind bites through thick layers of wool and the streets glisten with the damp chill of the Thames. The cobblestones beneath your feet are uneven, slick with rain. The air is thick with the mingling scents of burning coal, horse manure, and the ever-present staleness of overcrowded tenements. Tall, soot-streaked buildings rise on either side of narrow alleys, casting long, hungry shadows beneath the faint orange glow of gas lamps. Their dim light flickers and sputters in the fog. Barely cutting through the gloom, a faint murmur ripples through the crowd. Passers-by huddle closer together, whispering nervously. There's a name passed from mouth to mouth, not too loudly, but urgently. The monster strikes again. You feel a twinge of fear crawl up your spine. No one knows what he looks like. No one knows how he chooses his victims, or where he'll strike next. But the rumors are terrifyingly consistent. Women, respectable and ordinary, going about their day, suddenly shrieking in pain. A blade, a pin, a concealed weapon of some kind. Quick slashes to their thighs, their hips, just enough to draw blood, to spark panic. Then the attacker vanishes into the mist. The newspapers call him the London Monster. And though his face remains unseen, his presence looms over every darkened street corner, every anxious breath. The city, vast and crowded, now feels suffocatingly small. Because terror doesn't need a name when it's already living in your mind. Hey there, curious minds, welcome back to the channel where history meets mystery and true crime steps out from the dusty pages of time. If you love diving deep into the past to unearth forgotten tales that still echo in today's world, then you're in for something truly fascinating. Today, we're cracking open one of the earliest, eeriest, and most controversial chapters in London's criminal history, a story that haunted the minds of citizens long before Jack the Ripper ever stalked the streets. We're talking about the London Monster, a figure so infamous, so shrouded in fear and speculation, that his name alone sent shivers down the spines of Georgian society. Between 1788 and 1790, this so-called monster gripped the city in a wave of hysteria. Dozens of women came forward with disturbing accounts of being attacked in the streets, slashed with knives, pricked with pins, their clothes torn, their dignity shattered. And the most chilling part? The attacks seemed completely random. The perpetrator elusive, invisible. Almost ghost-like, but here's where things get even more intriguing. After months of panic and public outcry, a man named Rhynwick Williams was arrested and convicted. A perfumer by trade, with no prior record of violence, and yet he was labeled the monster. The evidence? Sketchy at best. The accusations? Conflicting, questionable. So how did he end up behind bars? Was Williams truly guilty? Or was he simply a scapegoat, caught in the crosshairs of a society so consumed by fear that it needed a villain more than it needed the truth? This isn't just a tale of crime, it's a deep dive into the psychology of fear, the power of the media, and the way public perception can tip the scales of justice. It's a cautionary tale about what happens when reason is replaced by rumor and justice by judgment. Let's take a step back to the teeming streets of late 18th century London, where the air was thick with smoke, chatter, and now, something far more sinister. This was an era of growth and grit. Carriages rattled over uneven cobblestones, merchants hollered in marketplaces, and the city pulsed with life at every turn. But beneath all that bustle, a new current began to course through the city, a current of fear. The whispers started small, fleeting accounts of women being suddenly attacked in broad daylight. Not robbed. Not followed home. But deliberately and sadistically assaulted. A sharp prick to the thigh. A sudden slash across the hem of a skirt. Wounds that were painful, intimate, and utterly confusing. The weapon? Often a concealed blade or a sharpened pin, hidden in a bouquet of flowers, tucked inside a walking stick, or stitched into clothing. The attacks were swift. The victims left stunned. And the attacker? Gone in seconds. The city couldn't keep it quiet for long. Before anyone could catch their breath, London's newspapers were ablaze. Sensational headlines blared warnings. Engravings and lurid illustrations filled pamphlets sold on street corners. People clutched them with a morbid curiosity, trading stories over ale in taverns and around hearths at home. It wasn't just a crime wave, it was a cultural phenomenon. The attacker was soon dubbed the London Monster, a name that struck fear in every household, especially among women who now looked over their shoulders with every step. In a twist that could almost be mistaken for satire, a group calling itself the Society for the Detection of the Monster emerged. That's right, an actual organization formed to hunt down this unknown fiend. They wore badges, offered rewards, and turned the search for justice into something between a civic duty and a public spectacle, and with every new report, every scream in the street, the city's anxiety intensified. People were no longer waiting for answers, they were demanding them. The pressure on authorities reached a boiling point. Politicians, constables, and everyday citizens alike were desperate to see someone held accountable, but in their haste, the question remained, would they find the real monster? Or simply someone to blame? And then enter Rhynwick Williams. Not a thug, not a lurking figure in the night, but a perfumer, a man who made his living crafting delicate scents, not wielding weapons. He wasn't someone who stood out in a threatening way. He blended into society, dressed respectably, held a trade, and by all accounts lived a quiet life. But in a city teetering on the edge of hysteria, it didn't take much to draw suspicion. Williams was arrested in June of 1790, and the details surrounding his capture were, to put it lightly, questionable. His arrest was sparked by a woman who claimed he looked like the man who had attacked her. Others followed with similar accusations, but as the testimonies rolled in, a pattern emerged, not of consistency, but of contradiction. Descriptions didn't match. Timelines fell apart. Some claimed he looked like the attacker. Others admitted uncertainty. Still, the machinery of panic was already in motion. There was no physical evidence. No weapon. No blood-stained clothes. No eyewitness who could say with certainty that they had seen him commit the attacks. What they did have was public pressure, media frenzy, and a desperate need for closure. People wanted to believe the monster had been caught, needed to believe it, even if the facts didn't quite hold up, and so, with a trial that bore all the marks of bias and hysteria, Rhynwick Williams was convicted. He was sentenced to 6 years in prison. 6 years for a crime that may never have been proven beyond a reasonable doubt. His pleas of innocence were drowned out by the collective sigh of relief from a terrified city eager to move on. But history has a long memory. And as time passed, scholars and legal minds began to question what really happened. Was Williams truly the monster, a cunning predator who had simply blended in too well? Or was he an unlucky man in the wrong place at the wrong time, made into a monster by a city that had already decided there was one? To this day, the answer remains elusive. But the case stands as a chilling reminder: when fear takes over, truth often gets pushed aside, and in the rush to find someone to blame, innocence can be the first casualty. All right, now it's your turn. What do you think? Was Rhynwick Williams truly the London monster? Was he a cunning attacker hiding behind a polite smile and a respectable trade? Or was he an innocent man, swept up in a wave of fear, finger pointed by a city that needed a villain more than it needed the truth? I'm dying to hear your take, so head down to the comments and share your theory. Do you think justice was served? Or do you think this was one of history's earliest examples of trial by public opinion? And hey, if you love exploring the strange intersections of true crime, psychology, and history, you're in the right place. We dive into forgotten cases, unravel historical mysteries, and shine a light on stories the textbooks often overlook. So don't forget to hit that like button, subscribe to The Crime Keeper, and tap the notification bell so you never miss a dark tale from the past that still echoes in the present. We're just getting started. The tale of the London Monster is more than just a historical oddity, it's a mirror. A chilling reminder that fear, when left unchecked, can become its own kind of predator. It doesn't always need claws or blades. Sometimes, all it takes is panic, whispers, and a desperate hunger for certainty. In 18th century London, that fear stalked the streets just as much as the so-called monster did. It crept into courtrooms, distorted truth, and ultimately helped convict a man who may have been innocent. Justice, in its purest form, demands patience and evidence, but when society rushes to find a villain, those ideals can be the first to fall. And here's the thing, we're not so different today. The tools may have changed: tweets instead of pamphlets, viral videos instead of broadsheets, but the speed at which outrage spreads? That's eerily familiar. Public trials now play out on timelines, and reputations can be destroyed before facts even surface. That's why stories like this matter. They remind us to think deeper, to pause before we point, and to ask the uncomfortable questions. So as you walk through the world, whether scrolling your feed or watching a headline unfold, stay curious, stay critical, and always question the shadows, because in the end, history has teeth. And the past, if we let it, can still teach us how not to repeat it. Thank you for joining us on this journey through one of London's most haunting mysteries. If you're hungry for more tales where crime meets history, where psychology meets storytelling, subscribe to The Crime Keeper, ring that bell, and let's keep unraveling the darkest threads of the past, together. Until next time, stay sharp.